This is the Night Wolf howling at you, and we're going to quickly do a kind of a review of the Masters of the Universe Revolution series. And spoiler alert, there'll be lots of spoilers in this one. If you haven't seen the series, you might as well watch it, unless you're trying to see if it's worth watching. And I will be honest, it was better than Revelation, although in my opinion that's still a very low bar to meet. We have a battle in Subternia where King Randor gets a chance to fight alongside He-Man. We have King Randor dying of a disease. And of course, as everybody knows, King Randor telling Prince Adam that he cannot be both He-Man and the king. He has to choose between the scepter and the sword, because the king generally comes off as being a worthless POS in this show, to be honest with you. We have Randor's half-brother, the Gar Keldor, show up, the bastard child of King Miro and some woman from the island where the Gar live. And he is not allowed to become king, so on a weird side note, the mother says that he should be sent back to the island when he becomes of age, because the Gar are not supposed to leave the island, which I'm not sure whose laws then it's supposed to be that would keep Keldor from becoming the king, since he was the oldest child. We also get introduced to Skeletor's new form, which ends up with the name Skeletech. And he looks an awful lot like the Beast Wars Transmetal Megatron dragon form. And of course, Motherboard and the Hordak show up, and it's just kind of meh, to be honest. And I don't like the design for Hordak. Also, on a side note, we did hear voices for Rio Blast, Buzz-Off, and Snoutspout, and they were all really cringy. I'm sure it has more to do with the voice direction than the actual voice actors themselves, but I just wanted to throw that in there. Meanwhile, Teela is trying to bring back Preternia so that the king's soul can go to rest there. She goes to talk to the spirit of her mother that is trapped in Castle Grayskull to find out what she needs to do, and learns that there are actually 3 different magics in the world. The Zor magic, the Ka magic, or the snake magic, and the Havoc magic, which would be Skeletor's Havoc staff. So now she goes on a quest to find the Dark Smoke and talk to Grenemere, where we find out that Evil Lynn has been hanging out there as nursemaid because the shit that she did caused Grenemere to be slowly dying of a disease. Grenemere sounds to be kind of cordial, and then gets angry and like he's going to eat her, and then he finally gives Teela the snake magic, and Evil Lynn helps Teela fight, or learn to fight as the Snake Teela, or whatever you want to call her. Eternian Goddess is still the name for the figure at any rate. And so this is weird because Teela starts talking like Cobra Commander with the hissing the S's. And I think it's only during this fight that she does that. Later on when she's with everybody else, still in this green form, I don't remember her actually ever hissing her S's at that point. So now we need to get our hands on the Havoc magic. And of course, Hordak also shows up with the Horde fleet in order to try to take over Eternia. And I'm not a big fan of Hordak's overall design, especially with the more flesh tone colored skin. It looks gross, and not in the fun kind of gross way that you'd like. It looks gross more in the I'm gonna puke because this is just so bad. Of course, Skeletor is shown to be Keldor, or I should say Keldor is shown to be Skeletor. To which somebody makes the mention that Keldor really existed, and Skeletor is surprised. More so when he finds out that Keldor is actually him. And he starts to regain some of those memories, but also that Keldor inside of him wants to take over everything as well, making Skeletor and Keldor basically still the same person. We do get a flashback in this series that shows Skeletor and Hordak in what would presumably be the nursery in the Palace of Eternos, where Skeletor is captured and Hordak gets away, presumably with a child. There's also a moment in this flashback where we kind of see Skeletor briefly flash as Keldor, which I think they missed something here, where it would have been nice as if the Keldor personality inside of him, he seemed like in the earlier flashbacks in the show, I guess at the beginning, like he actually cared about his brother. So it seems kind of weird that they had such a falling out, which I guess technically did happen in the 2000 series as well. So Skeletor ends up killing Motherboard, presenting the head to Hordak, and then fights Hordak. Battle ensues. Skeletor eventually wins, which I have to agree with some other people who've mentioned this in about this. That seems really unlikely that Hordak would lose to Skeletor like that. But anyway, in Skeletor's weakened state afterwards, Evelyn's able to take advantage and chop off the Havoc hand that he has and steal the Havoc staff to give to Teela in order to give her the opportunity to combine all three magics and return Preternia. Now, while all this has been going on, and even earlier in the show, we had a nanobot virus that allowed the Horde to take over the people of Eternia. Skeletor also made a version of that with the help of Andra doing his Keldor disguise while he was king of Eternos. So thank you, Andra, for that help. And anyway, they find that the power of Grayskull can eradicate this nanovirus. So they send the Power Sword with ORko to a character called Gwildor, along with Man-at-Arms, to enhance the sword to allow them to do a more burst of power of Grayskull to heal everyone. There is a brief conversation between Man-at-Arms and Gwildor talking about traveling the universe and how Gwildor doesn't want to do any adventuring. And of course, Gwildor doesn't like ORko, and ORko doesn't like Gwildor, so they're a happy couple. Man-at-Arms has to leave when the Horde shows up, so those two still work on the sword. Until eventually, the Horde shows up at their doorstep to get a hold of the sword, and we see ORko and Gwildor fighting like they were trained to fight, which makes absolutely little sense with this series. But then again, Evelyn was also jumping around like a maniac, like she's some kind of kung fu acrobat, and she wasn't supposed to be that either. We do get a brief romantic interlude between He-Man and the Sorceress, to which Evelyn decides to mock them a little.
Well, if no one else can muster the courage to say it. He-Man and Teela sitting in a tree, Kissing.
Teela attempts to combine the powers, all three of them together, where she becomes the Tri-Sorceress, as they call her. But what she really looks like is Krita from the New Adventures of He-Man, to a certain extent. And it doesn't start working. She doesn't have enough power, and it's not quite functioning properly. And then Gwildor and ORko show up after having somehow defeated the Horde and give the Adam the sword. And he jumps up to Teela and calls upon the power of Grayskull while holding on to Teela, and boom, he transforms into the Golden He-Man, and she turns into the I guess I would call her the Eternian Tower Sorceress version now, because that's what her outfit looks like. Not one of the better designs, to be perfectly honest. I guess it's okay. I just kind of prefer the Snake version, and I actually kind of like the Critter version of her too. A massive battle ensues at this time. Skeletor versus He-Man. Eventually, He-Man stabs Skeletor with the newly enhanced Power Sword, which, when magic is used with it, it absorbs magic. So, it starts to absorb all the magic that is part of Skeletor, eventually removing both the technology and sorcery, leaving him as Keldor. And so Keldor is locked away in Castle Grayskull. The palace has been destroyed. And Everybody's happy, though, I guess. Prince Adam gives his little speech about how they will undo the monarchy and the people of Eternia can now rule themselves. And we hear that Andra, who, let's be perfectly honest, if you watch the show, was probably not the most competent person in the show, is running for an office. Sounds like she wants to be the one in charge. And I fear for the future of Eternia if she gets elected as the president of Eternia or something. In with her, which would be in Castle Grayskull, where Keldor is locked away. Although I thought Castle Grayskull had also been destroyed at the end of Revelations, and maybe I'll have to go back and rewatch that last episode. I still have to rewatch the first episode. But anyway, the show ends with us seeing Hordak in what looks like some kind of Bacta tank from Star Wars. And we see the feminine form of Despara walk up to him, talking about how they will fix him and then they will go down to Eternia together and defeat He-Man and Skeletor. And of course, Despara is obviously the baby that Hordak stole. So it'll be Adora again, like it was in the DC Comics. Overall, like I said, the show was pretty good. I definitely liked it better than Revelation. The characterizations on a number of the characters was a lot better as well. I would definitely say that this is more like probably what it should have been in the beginning and not what it ended up being. You know what I mean? So, is it worth the watch? If you got nothing better to watch, sure, you probably won't regret it. If you didn't care for Revelations, though, why bother with the sequel series? I will probably watch the next part because I do want to see what they do with Despara. Anyway, I guess that's all I have to say on this one. I did record individual reviews of the episodes, but they ended up being really long, and I don't feel like editing them because I have to take pictures of screenshots because for whatever reason I can't get screenshots off of Netflix. So that process was really obnoxious to try to do. So maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful to you. Peace and love.